Heather Graham wrote, directed, and produced Chosen Family. How was it working with a director who also gets the actor side of things? And what kind of environment did she create on set?
She was great. She was really set a nice tone. She was very collaborative as a director, and but also had a clear vision and was able to communicate that. Yeah, she sent me this script a couple of years ago, and it was very inspiring to watch her get it financed and see it through to the end. Because it's a story that's very close to her. And I just think it was a really good script. It was very funny and laugh out loud. Like I really enjoyed reading it and I really enjoyed making it.
In one of your strongest scenes with Heather, you two get into a physical fight where you were both literally punching each other. Take us through working through that scene. As far as the choreography, were there any near misses?
The funny thing about that scene was that, so like I said, Heather had sent me the script and it took a little while to get it financed before we were actually in production. And in that time, I found out, like just before we were supposed to start shooting, I found out that I was pregnant. So I wasn't supposed to tell anybody. And I'd kind of forgotten about that fight scene. So I was like, I'm just going to keep this to myself because I don't want to
Yeah.
stress her out and I don't want to jeopardize the film and all that. And then we got to the rehearsal for that fight scene and I was like, oops, I better say something. And I just kind of blurted out to her and to the producers that I was pregnant. Luckily, they didn't fire me. And we were able to keep it safe because we kind of choreographed it so that I was always in control of where we were and I could protect myself with like my knees and my hands and
Right.
um so it was fine. Uh but yeah, the way that it's aside from that, the way that it's written, like it's just a physical manifestation of this relationship between these two sisters.
And you played an addict in this film. Did you have to do any special preparation or research to play the role?
I feel like her sobriety and her addiction, her struggles with addiction was really just like the tip of the iceberg. It wasn't quite
Right.
an amplifying factor of her of
Mhm.
hers. It just like launches her into the film because she's in and out of rehab. That's just like a symptom of the bigger thing with Cleo, which is that she's really angry at the world and kind of throwing up a middle finger to everybody, but doing that to get people to pay attention to how much pain she's in. But again, I didn't even have to like articulate it that way. It was so on the page when I read the script that I felt like I just needed to come to set and service Heather's vision.
So the film essentially ends with Anne choosing herself and her chosen family and her putting up boundaries with Cleo and her own family. However, her future with Steve was slightly open-ended. Do you think that Anne and Steve got back together eventually? And what do you think happened to Cleo?
Oh dear. I think Cleo probably didn't change much. And then I don't know in terms of like I think Anne maybe learned a lot over the course of the film, so maybe she'll go into that. If that relationship was rekindled, she'll go into it. Um, Armed differently? I don't know. It's hard to say.
You wrapped your directorial debut Wish You Were Here earlier this year. What was that experience like being behind the camera? And what are you most excited for fans to see in the film?
It was so wonderful. It had been like a career-long goal of mine to direct a film, and I finally got to do it. And it was exhilarating. It's a lot of hard work, but it's also really energizing because you are really in the driver's seat and you communicate your ideas to a team of people that then have to make it come to life. And it's just so exciting. It's called Wish You Were Here, and it's based on a book by Renee Carlino that I adapted. And it's a love story. There's some lighter moments, but then there's also it's kind of a tragedy. And the point of the movie is really just to remind us about how all we really have is the present moment that that you should make the most out of the life that you can live. And it'll be out in theaters, I think early next year. I don't have an exact release date yet, but it'll be early next year in theaters.
That's very exciting. Since Heather, I believe Chosen Family is the second film that she's directed. Did she give you any advice about directing or anything like that, going from acting to directing?
She gave advice by example. Like she wasn't saying like, "Let me tell you how it's done, kid."
Yeah.
She just by example was very very inspiring as a director because she was very collaborative and very strong in her vision, but kind as a director too. And she didn't have to try too hard to get everybody to listen to her. She commanded a lot of respect just because she had written a beautiful script and everybody was there because they wanted to support her and support the movie, and not for, on a small movie, a small low budget movie like this, everyone's really there genuinely for her.
As a 90s kid, I feel like I'd be failing my duty if I did not ask one question about 10 things I hate about you. This past March marked the film's 25th anniversary, and it still holds up now. Is there a moment or line fans bring up the most, and are you surprised by the film's long-lasting legacy?
I'm so happy and grateful for the film's continued life and that it still means something to people because that's what you want as a performer. And I remember when I first read the script, I was so excited about the opportunity to play Kat because it was so refreshing to read a character like that. And also, the movie was just a really fun, heartfelt comedy. And so to be cast in it was huge. But then to then feel like, oh, audiences are responding the way that I did is just very affirming. And yeah, I mean, that's what you want as a performer is to be able to like make tell stories and make movies that people care about and have a life many years later.
Will you let your kids watch it one day?
Yeah, sure, totally.
Do you think that's going to be the film they're going to enjoy the most, or do you think there's another film that they might like more?
That might be the film they're allowed to watch sooner rather than later. Like the
Yes.
Bourne movies are going to have to wait a few
Yeah.
years. Yeah, Save the Last Dance too. They'll probably have to wait for that because there's some heavy subject matter in that. But
Right.
10 Things will be one of the first things that they can watch.